Are you willing to take a chance with even one life? The Park Savoy Hotel, located on 158 West 58th Street, slated to become a homeless shelter housing 150 men. With security equipment at the ready, a state appeals judge has put the plans on hold after a suit citing safety concerns. Folks, shelter insanity. We saw it on the front page of the Daily News, and we're hearing all about it. Now let's cut to the chase, and we brought in the experts to help us clear up the myths and the rumors. We have with us here today Bob Skallerup, Deputy Commissioner of New York City DOB and DHS.
And DHS.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, Bob. You're an expert, and I can see why because of your resume.
Well, I started a long time ago. I'm a licensed architect. I've been licensed for about 40 years now. Worked for the department, private practice for a long time. Worked for the Department of Buildings, starting in 2001, right before 9/11, and stayed with the DOB for a year until I was recruited by the Department of Homeless Services, and went over there and stayed for 9 years. And in that capacity, I was the Deputy Commissioner for Facilities and was responsible for the maintenance and acquisition and upkeep of all of the city-owned facilities and privately owned facilities in the DHS inventory.
Oh, well, thank you so much for making time to join us here to clarify some stuff. We've been hearing a lot about this shelter, which was slated to be open, I guess, some time back now. What can you tell us about the facility itself?
Well, the facility itself is it's about 100 years old. It predates a lot of buildings in Manhattan, but there's a lot of buildings of its age. And it has come through its life, prior to this as an SRO, prior to this as a tourist hotel, and then prior to that as an SRO. But it's come now to the city as a homeless shelter. And it is my informed opinion that it is not suitable as a homeless shelter, given its nature and given its internal configuration. What is primarily the most unsafe aspect of the building, and this is compared to any building, is that there is only one means of egress. Now, for those less informed, one means of egress means there's only one way in and one way out. And this means of egress happens to be a tall story. This is a 9-story building. It happens to be a tall stairway located in the middle of the building. And further compounding the problem is the fact that the stairway itself has what are called winders. And those are small little steps as they turn the corner, which narrow the stairway down and increase the riser height as it goes around the corner, making the stairway in and of itself, despite the fact that there's only one, it makes the stairway in and of itself extremely unsafe, dangerous. It's one of those things that has to be avoided at all cost. Building codes years and years ago, under certain circumstances, used to allow one stairway, but it's always a function of how many people per floor and how many floors of the building. Nowadays, and it's been this way for half a century or more, buildings with one means of egress are not permitted in any jurisdiction, in any code, anywhere in this country, and like I say, they haven't been for years and years. Further, winders have not been seen in stairs used as a means of egress for countless decades. So all of a sudden, here's a building that's come to the city and that the city wants to use as a homeless shelter, except once again, in this particular case, 9 stories, they want to put a total of 140 to 150 homeless men in the facility, and with only one means of egress. That's a big problem. The second big problem, as I see it, is that the building is not fully sprinklered. The sleeping rooms, I believe they're scheduled to be 2 men per room. The sleeping rooms are not sprinklered. The only portion of the building that's sprinklered are the corridors and the corridor leading to the front door. This is also problematic. In order to properly protect life safety in the event of a fire. The fire is most likely to start in a sleeping room and spread to the building. If it started in a sleeping room on the lower floor in the back of the building, there would be a big pileup in that narrow stairway as the residents above the lower floor tried to get out. This is compounded by the fact that usually after the alarm goes off, the fire department shows up pretty quickly, and they're going to be wanting to go up that same single dangerous stair. Can't rely on sprinklers to put the fire out because the building isn't fully sprinklered. Another problem, the corridor. The stair dumps into a corridor on the ground floor at the back of the building. And to get out, you have to go all the way forward down this narrow corridor, past a restaurant, and then out on the street. All building codes, at least for a long time, require two means of egress from a building, but one of those means of egress has to exit directly to the street, which means the correct configuration of this building would be another means of egress somewhere toward the back of the building perhaps that's dedicated to egress. It doesn't go through any other part of the building, and it proceeds directly to the street, which in this case is the front, since the building is landlocked on all four sides. What other problems have we been talking about with this building? The handicapped accessibility is almost non-existent.
Isn't that covered, sir, under the Americans with Disabilities Act?
It is covered under the Americans with Disabilities Act, and there are essentially no exceptions to that. And I can't understand why in this particular building there is only one small elevator, approximately 3 feet by 4 feet, or 3 feet by 3.5 feet, I believe, located near the stairway, located near the single stairway, that's to accommodate shelter residents. Normally, in case of a fire, there should be not only two stairways, but the fire department would want to be using that dedicated elevator, but it's not available because it's too small. And also, it's not big enough for firefighting equipment or gurneys. In case of an injury, they would have to wind their way down that single stairway. The building has been called a fire trap, and I don't believe that this is an exaggeration. It fails on just about all levels of safety that one would expect to find in a building of this nature and use. And if you check a cursory examination of the code, rules this building out for this occupancy classification and for this use classification.
Commissioner, how are they getting around it? What is, I know they're trying to rush this project. How are they getting around all the rules and regs? And
well, the building codes and the building department prescribe minimum standards, and those minimum standards are sometimes achievable by using a particular clause. I'll call it a loophole. It's not really a loophole, it's the law. But you can do what's called grandfather. In other words, if your building was built a long time ago and you haven't changed it, or you haven't changed its use or its occupancy, generally speaking, you can continue to use it year after year after year if nothing has changed. Granted, owners like to upgrade the fire safety systems and other aspects of the building in the meantime, which has happened in this particular case, but still, grandfathering has exceptions. You can't grandfather a building that's unsafe. You can't say all of a sudden, I've only got one means of egress, but because the building was built in 1911, that's all I need because it's grandfathered. This is a simplification of the issue, but that's basically where the building department is today on this issue. And as we have stated before, you can't grandfather safety. The thing that eliminates this building from consideration, in my mind, is the simple fact that it's unsafe. It is clearly unsafe, and it's not going to be safe until people start addressing the real problems. A second means of egress, dedicated egress, sprinklers in all the rooms, etc.
if built, we always hope for the best, prepare for the worst. If built, who will be called to be responsible? Who's going to hold liability on this when people perish?
Well, it's a there are several parties involved in this building. It starts with the building owner, and then that flows to the not-for-profit social service organization that's contracted with the city, and then to the city itself, to the Department of Homeless Services. And if in the event, God forbid, that there is a fire in the building, that there is a loss of life, there are going to be a lot of people with a lot of blood on their hands. That's not an exaggeration. This building is a nightmare waiting to happen.
The local elected official, if I'm not mistaken, doing research for this program is Keith Powers. He's the council member that covers that area. I don't know much of what he has agreed to or where he's going to go with this, but if you live in this district, reach out to Councilmember Powers and let him know. You know, one life lost is one life too many. We're hearing from an expert who has dealt with these type of buildings in the past, and you also dealt with DHS. I also understand this, Commissioner, and correct me if I'm wrong, that some of these our homeless neighbors that are set to move in are not all healthy at times, so that you need to have some type of accommodation for them. Is that correct?
The adult male homeless population is generally referred to as vulnerable or frail. People, every New Yorker of every stripe is familiar with homeless men. You see them every day. Some of them are in the shelters, some are what they call shelter resistant. They want to go into the shelters. Presumably the individuals that go into this shelter will be ambulatory, but they still are frail. And they can't be relied on to make good decisions quickly, in some cases due to the fact that they use drugs or drink a lot. And they would be the ones that could be considered future residents of this building. When I was at DHS for 9 years, responsible for adding countless new shelters to the shelter inventory for the city, and being an architect primarily concerned with health and life safety, we would never collectively allow a shelter to open with this type of configuration and under these circumstances. And it just, once again, it's unimaginable, and I feel that the city should not allow this to happen.
Do you believe that just the rush to get the homeless population into these type of buildings is just placing lives at risks?
Yes. The Department of Buildings, or the Department of Homeless Services, exists in a constant world of what used to be called capacity crises. And that means that they don't have enough capacity to hold the population. And that would be forcing this issue.
Well, Commissioner, thank you so much for taking the time to join us and for educating us. A lot of people have seen it out there, Shelter Insanity, and they wanted to know further. And we're going to let people know. We're going to play this over and over again so people could learn and listen. And let's see if we could save lives together. And I thank you for your time, sir.
Well, thank you for asking me.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
We're going to be right back to talk about the fire safety end of this Shelter Insanity on the other side of the break.
A fire breaks out on the first floor of a two-family house. Door. The woman quickly leaves to call the fire department. Door. And two people die upstairs, overcome by smoke. Door. A man smoking in bed starts a fire. The door. Leaves the bedroom, rushes to a phone. The door. And before the fire department gets there, the door. The rest of his house burns down. The door. Is there one single act that could have been done? Close the door. To help prevent this needless loss of life and property? Close the door. What should these people have done? Close the door. Do you know that a door is one of the best pieces of firefighting and life-saving equipment? Close the door. And if you leave a room that is on fire, close the door. If you simply close the door, it will help stop the fire and smoke from spreading too quickly. Close the door.
We are here discussing the shelter insanity. Everyone saw it in the front page of the Daily News. The issue concerned here is the Savoy, Park Savoy Hotel, 158 West 58th Street in Manhattan. It's a 170-year-old building, 9-story building. They're trying to open up a homeless shelter there. So a lot of people put a stop to that. It's in court right now, and we have with us here to talk about the safety issue, safety expert, retired FDNY captain, Robert Kruper. Cap, first of all, thank you for your service, sir.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. Let us first of all, give us a little bit about your background, where you've been, what you've done.
So I joined the fire department in 1981, retired in 2002 as a captain, and after that, since 2005 up to the present, I've been involved in fire safety consulting, mainly doing fire safety plans for high-rise office buildings and hotels in New York City.
I've seen your name in connection with the shelter insanity bit. I saw you on TV.
Yes.
Tell us about all this. What in your mind, when you see this, what does it tell you as an expert?
Well, from a firefighting point of view, a 10-story high-rise building with one stairwell, one means of egress, goes against all building code, all firefighting operations. So one of the initial operations of the first officer to arrive on the scene of a high-rise fire is to designate one of the two stairways, normally one stairwell as a attack stairwell, and that's a stairwell that the fire department will set up the hose and then open the door and move into the hallway to put the fire out. The problem, and then the other stairwell will normally be designated the evacuation stairwell. This is announced to all the firefighters, so any firefighter doing an evacuation from the floor above will know not to go down the attack stairwell. The reason for that is the moment you open up that door into the attack stairwell, all the heat and smoke will rise up the stairwell and turn it into a chimney. So anybody caught on that stairwell, be they a fireman or a civilian, has a chance to be overcome from the smoke or the heat. And you'll wind up with the injuries, casualties as a result of that. So it's very important that we maintain one stairwell as a attack stairwell without any of the products of combustion or heat. People forget that most people in fires die from exposure to carbon monoxide and smoke. So in this case, we have one stairwell. The second the attack begins, the rest of the stairwell will fill with smoke, making it impossible for anybody above the fire at that point to continue to evacuate.
So Captain, now this will be madness. Your
It would.
firefighters are trying to get in. People are trying to get out. One stairwell.
Right. Well, I haven't even addressed that part yet, and that is the second that you show up and people are coming down the stairs, it's at some points 28 inches wide. So we're going to try to get a fully outfitted fireman in bunker gear along with hoses, forcible entry equipment going up the stairs while the occupants are coming down. You're going to have a delayed response to any fire. That's going to allow the fire to get larger. So now we have a fire in an unsprinkled room. The fact that the hallway is sprinkled doesn't reduce the amount of heat or smoke coming out of that room. Okay? Then you'll be delayed. The fire will get larger, increasing the chances of the fire spreading to adjoining rooms via the outside. Again, these buildings have openable windows, so the fire can spread through auto exposure from the outside, going out the window up to the next floor. So when the fire increases, you increase the opportunity for auto exposure within the building. So now we have a delayed response because of trying to get up the stairs. We have one stairwell that becomes unusable once you open the doorway to the fire area. It's just it's a nightmare, and I don't know what the city is thinking by putting actually anybody in this building, but even worse is making it now a transient residence.
I was looking at some of the video. We want to thank Telemundo 47, and we want to thank Channel 2 for allowing us to use some of their video on our program. The source of water for a fire at this location, where does it come from? Is there an internal source of water in this place?
There's normally the building this old, and I'm not sure. I haven't seen the riser diagram, but normally there's a tank on the roof which provides a few thousand gallons of water, which supplies the sprinkler system and the standpipe system initially. And then once the fire department get there, they will hook up to the standpipe. That's the red pipe that normally runs through the stairwells. And then they will hook up their hoses to the floor below, or two floors below.
You know, it's really madness. I saw the entrance and all that security equipment.
Well,
it's amazing.
That's an additional problem of just getting into the building. Again, you can only go in single file, and people can only come out single file. So the response will be delayed, and that time becomes critical in the fire. Seconds, minutes become critical.
We spoke with the commissioner on a segment before you, and we spoke about aided cases. You know, EMS coming into the facility to remove someone that's sick or injured. The elevator.
Yeah.
It's not ADA compliant. What would be the issue? You know, I know that the fire department also now, they respond to aided cases.
Yeah.
What would be the issue when it comes to that?
So there's two issues with that elevator. In high-rise buildings, which this is, firefighters use elevators to get to the fire, because otherwise a fire on the 8th or 9th floor, you are now walking up eight or 9 floors with 100 pounds of equipment. So elevators are used to get you to within 2 floors of the fire. There's fireman service, which keeps it safe. We make sure that the elevators work. So normally, the first unit to respond will go into the fire. Before firefighters enter, take as much of the equipment up, get off, and then the next firefighter, one firefighter will operate it, go down, pick up everybody else, and he'll ferry everybody up to get them up there quicker than walking. In this building, from the size that I've heard, that you can't get more than 1 person in an elevator. Wow. 2 people. 2 firemen aren't going to fit, along with all the equipment. So now the only way to get to these fires is to walk up the possible 8, 9 floors.
That one staircase.
Up that one staircase, yeah. So that's in a fire scenario. In an EMS scenario, again, you'd have to walk up with all the equipment. EMS would have to tend to the person and then carry them down. They're not going to, an EMS crew won't be able to carry somebody down 8, 9 flights of stairs, winding stairs, narrow stairs. In that case, they normally call the nearby fire companies. My guess is it would take at least 2 companies to get someone down from one of the upper floors. So you get the person down. While they're being brought down, it's hard to tend to them. If they have a heart attack, they need CPR. It's going to be hard to do that while you're carrying them down. Additionally, 2 fire units are out of service during that time. So a fire in that response area will have a delayed response also.
You have something I noticed by going there. You have an adjacent building. This is the Savoy, and then you have an adjacent building on both sides. Is the possibility, from your experience, that the fire can spread to those adjacent buildings? Is that
it would have to be a very large fire. But again, as I mentioned, auto exposure is when a building exposes fire to stuff through the outside. So if fire blows out the window, it can now ignite the contents of the room above. Well, auto exposure can go from building to building if there are 2 windows adjacent, even though there's a fireproof wall between them. So as the fire gets larger, the chances of auto exposure increase, and as the delayed response occurs because of the logjam on the stairs, that becomes a larger possibility. It's usually not the case, though.
Fire travels up.
Fire
Smoke
normally
travels up.
Travels up, smoke travels up, heat travels up.
Individuals, without knowing the specifics of the building, do they have roof access to?
I don't know. That is normally not what is suggested in fires.
Suggested.
It's not to go to the roof. If you are in a room and it's filling with heat and smoke, what you should do is try to seal the doors and call the fire department and let them know that you're there.
That you're in that specific area.
This is a fireproof building.
What you guys go in? You have people that are trying to knock down the fire. you also have like a search and rescue?
Yes.
You have to know where the people are.
Right, there are two types of companies. There's engine companies and there's ladder companies, and everybody's seen that the ladder companies have the trucks on top, engine companies carry the hoses. So the engine company is a company that takes the hoses to the fire. The ladder companies gain access to the fire area and then do searches. So remember I spoke about getting to the floors above, having an evacuation stairwell. It would be the ladder companies that would then use that secondary stairway to gain access to the floors above and search for victims up there, make sure nobody was overcome by heat and smoke, and if they were, to bring them down and give them aid. So the problem, again, with one stairwell is once you begin fire operations, it will be very difficult for anybody, if the heat and smoke is going up that one stairwell, for anybody to even now to continue operations up there, or if they do, to get that person down, because they have to come into that one stairwell and down through the heat and smoke.
I'm listening to you, Captain, and it brings back thoughts of the Happy Land fire.
Yeah.
I know that Happy Land, was that a high-rise? No, it was not a
No,
high-rise.
no, I think that was a two-story,
Two-story.
illegal nightclub.
Right, but there was only one way in, one way out?
There was one way in, one way out. A fire was started in the stairwell, and that was a case of smoke and carbon monoxide causing majority of the fatalities. Is that people could not get down the stairways because it was on fire. They had no other way out, and they were overcome with smoke. I mean, with carbon monoxide, and that was the cause of most of the fatalities.
Most of the fatalities, and that's really unfortunate. And this is something that can be stopped. Am I correct? Someone can just step in tomorrow and say, "Look, this building is unsafe. Let's just stop this nonsense."
Yeah, as been mentioned by some of the Department of Building experts, yeah, there's a grandfathering clause, but that doesn't mean it's safe. This building is not safe in the event of a fire, just because it was built 100 years ago, and they're trying to say that the occupancy hasn't changed, even though there's some argument on both sides of that. It's not safe. It just isn't safe to make it a shelter. It's not safe to make it anything.
Period. Well, Captain, thank you for taking the time. Thank you for your service. It's great to have you here. You really enlighten a lot of us. I hope that the city is listening. One life lost is one life too many, Cap.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you for coming. And thank you so much for joining us again. I'm Clark Pena for the Advocates Corner, reminding you, let's take care of ourselves. More importantly, let's take care of each other. Until next time.